Alexander Rocha stood in his study, scanning the gilded invitations for his daughter's quinceanera. The oak desk under his hands reminded him of the empty chair beside him, where his late wife once sat. As a widowed CEO, every glance from his traditional relatives felt like a judgment on his solitary status. He imagined the whispers at the lakefront estate, questions about his love life cut sharper than any boardroom critique. To spare Camila and himself the agony, he considered a plan that sounded both daring and utterly unconventional. He reached for his phone, breathing out with a quiet laugh at the sheer absurdity of his thought. "Hire an actress," he muttered, picturing someone poised enough to handle a family reunion. This emotional story had a cinematic flair in his mind, a stranger playing the role of a loving partner. Yet beneath the surface of this scheme, a flicker of hope ignited. What if charm could bridge loneliness? He tapped the agency's number, unaware of how deeply this choice would reshape his life. The agency's representative met his precise criteria: discreet, elegant, and undeniably warm. He signed a contract with a mixture of relief and guilt, as if he were bluffing in a high-stakes poker game. Every detail felt real, from the curated photographs to the scripted introduction at the party. Little did he know this arrangement would turn into one of those touching stories that linger long after the act. With a final nod, he sealed his resolution, ready to face the reunion with a crafted companion at his side. Camila's radiant smile haunted him in quiet moments, reminding him why he'd chosen this elaborate ruse. He rehearsed his lines like a performer, hoping to fool both his family and his own beating heart. The memory of his wife's favorite flower, a white orchid, decorated every corner of the ballroom. In his solitude, he yearned for authenticity, even as he prepared to wear a carefully tailored mask. The tension between truth and performance tightened in his chest, setting the stage for upheaval. Outside the grand estate, guests arrived under a canopy of lanterns, laughter drifting through warm air. Alexander adjusted his cufflinks, feeling the weight of expectation heavier than any board vote. Behind the polished facade, he wondered if love could ever be negotiated like a simple contract. Though every inch of the evening was scripted, his mind wandered to moments unscripted, shared glances, shy smiles. The hollow promise of perfection contrasted sharply with the yearning in his chest for something real story. As the music swelled, he spotted Helena Costa stepping off the shuttle, her poise striking in soft candlelight. She curtsied gracefully, her eyes meeting his with a calm assurance that unsettled him. In that heartbeat, the artifice dissolved. Her presence felt genuine, her warmth disarming. He found himself drawn into an unspoken connection that transcended their professional pact. Questions he never asked himself began to surface. What if this pretend wife could become so much more? With Helena's hand poised at his side, Alexander felt the fragile line between pretense and reality blur. Each step toward the ballroom felt like crossing into uncharted territory, where his heart could wander freely. The hush among his family signaled the arrival of his carefully chosen guest, and a hush stirred within him too. He braced himself for whispers, but also braced for an unexpected spark that might light the night. And so, standing on the cusp of unanticipated change, he prepared to meet her with all he had. Alexander sat across from Helena in the quiet agency office, the soft hum of air conditioning easing his nerves. Her gaze held a gentle confidence that felt refreshingly unscripted, like stumbling into a secret garden. He offered a polite nod, expecting a rehearsed line, but she smiled, real and unguarded, catching him off balance. In that moment, he sensed the spark of an emotional story unfolding, one that no contract could predict. He found himself leaning in, curious about the woman who was supposed to be nothing more than his cover. They spoke of trivial things, favorite books, childhood memories, the smell of rain on asphalt. And Alexander realized her warmth wasn't an act. It was woven into every word she chose. He noticed small gestures, the way she tucked hair behind her ear, laughter in her eyes when she teased. His heart, long tucked behind spreadsheets and strategies, fluttered like a teenager's first crush. He wondered if this arrangement was becoming more than just a clever charade. Helena listened intently as he described Camila's boundless energy and love of music, her empathy shining through each question she asked about fatherhood. He saw her eyes soften when he spoke of his late wife's kindness, and felt guilt mingle with gratitude. Guilt for hiring her, gratitude for her genuine care. This was more than a paid performance. It was the start of something breathtakingly human. As they rehearsed their entrance for the party, their banter grew effortless, their scripted lines morphing into authentic laughter and playful jabs. Alexander felt a lightness he hadn't known since before his wife's passing. A reminder that even in pain, life can surprise us with moments of grace. He caught himself hoping this moment could stretch on forever. By the time Helena rose to leave, he lingered at the door, voice catching with a question unplanned. "Would you like to grab a coffee sometime, as friends?" Her eyes flickered with warmth and something deeper, a promise of possibility. He nodded, heart pounding, aware that this meeting had shifted his world on its pivot. And so, what began as a professional hire edged towards something astonishingly real. Behind her composed exterior, Helena carried debts like heavy suitcases, late-night grading sessions, and tutoring gigs stacking up like unpaid bills. Every smile she offered Alexander masked the anxiety knotting her stomach. Yet she poured sincerity into their conversations, as if seeking solace herself. Her life felt like a juggling act, and this job was her lifeline to stay afloat. At school, she guided students through poetry and prose, weaving lessons with passion. But after hours, she hustled through cafe shifts and online editing work to pay rent. She'd never imagined moonlighting as a pretend partner would be part of her story. Yet something about Alexander's kindness stirred hope she'd tucked away long ago. She clutched her teacher's planner, imagining how this charade might help her dream projects. Walking the school corridor next morning, whispers trailed behind her like shadows. She braced for questions. What would colleagues think of her sudden evening roll? Her heartbeat quickened, but she squared her shoulders, determined not to falter. Inside, she wondered if this double life could survive the glare of reality. Still, she reminded herself, sometimes you have to play a part to find your way back. In the quiet of her apartment, she stared at the agency's contract under lamplight, calculating how long the extra income would stretch, charting out overdue payments. Her reflection in the window looked weary, but resolute. She had no other choice. Even as the imposter's mask felt heavy, she held tight to her own authentic spark, because beneath every role she played was a woman determined to rewrite her destiny. When she arrived at the lakefront estate that evening, memories of tired nights lingered. But seeing Alexander's grateful nod eased the ache of her hidden burdens. She wore the guise of a loving partner, yet carried her true story deep inside. Her heart whispered that this gig was more than mere theater. It might become her turning point, and she stepped forward, bracing for the night's unfolding truths. The ballroom shimmered under chandeliers, petals drifting like confetti on a warm breeze. Camila's gasp sliced through the music when she saw her teacher at her father's side. Eyes wide, she felt her world tilt, betrayal twisting joy into something raw and jagged. Whispers ricocheted around them. "Is that Miss Costa? Why didn't he tell us?" The tension cracked the perfect facade like glass. Alexander's cheeks burned as Camila's hurt flashed in her eyes, so much like his late wife's grace. He grasped Helena's hand, voice tight. "Let me explain," but words stalled on his tongue. Helena squeezed back, pain flickering across her features. This was never meant to hurt a child. Camila turned away, arms crossed, tears threatening. The evening's magic seemed to crumble. And in that charged silence, everyone held their breath, waiting for the next move. Relatives leaned in, speculation buzzing like bees around a broken hive. Alexander opened his mouth, searching for honesty, but the script had no guidance here. He remembered his daughter's laughter, the promise he made to protect her heart. Clearing his throat, he offered a sincere apology to Camila's trembling frame. His confession hung between them, raw and unvarnished. Helena stepped forward, voice gentle but steady. "I never meant to cause pain." Her eyes met Camila's, vulnerability laid bare, a teacher's heart exposed in public. She spoke of her own need for help and her desire only to support, not deceive. The hush deepened as Camila listened, tears spilling free, shock softening into curiosity. In that fragile pause, something shifted, judgment softened to empathy. Camila watched her father's earnest gaze, saw the remorse etched on his face. Memories of bedtime stories and birthday hugs flooded her, melting the ache. She studied Helena's apologetic posture, recognized the sincerity in her tone. Her anger wavered, replaced by empathy that surprised even herself. She took a steadying breath, voice small but firm. "Tell me everything." As the music restarted, she guided both adults to a quiet terrace by the lake. Under lantern light, truths spilled. Why Alexander had felt the need for a ruse, and how Helena's vulnerable acceptance had sprung from her own struggles. Camila felt a swell of compassion, understanding the loneliness that drove them. In that moment, she chose to support her father's heart, giving them grace to heal. Her forgiveness wasn't immediate. It glimmered like sunrise after a long night. "Dad," she whispered, linking arms with him, "I just want you to be happy." Helena nodded, tears of relief sparkling, her burdens feeling lighter now. Camila's acceptance became the bridge from pretense to possibility. The party resumed with renewed warmth, laughter richer for its authenticity. Alexander found himself pacing the quiet corridor outside Helena's classroom, heart hammering like a drum. He carried a modest bouquet of white orchids, an homage to the night they'd shared. Knowing words alone felt flimsy. Each step echoed his hope. Could this fragile spark survive beyond the glow of lanterns and borrowed smiles? He glanced at the door, breath hitching with anticipation, as if a single knock could redraw both their futures. In that brief silence, he summoned courage, ready to turn their emotional story into something genuine. When he slipped inside, Helena looked up from her desk, surprise softening into a warm welcome. Her smile held both relief and curiosity, as though she'd been waiting for this moment as much as he had. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice low but determined, feeling the weight of every unsaid promise. She nodded, closing her notebook, the air between them charged with possibilities neither dared name. His chest tightened, a cocktail of nerves and excitement. This was no longer an arrangement, but a real story unfolding. They walked to the school's small courtyard, where ivy climbed weathered walls like time itself. Alexander cleared his throat, meeting her gaze head-on. "I want more than pretense. I want you." Helena's eyes glistened, part disbelief, part hope, her guard softening under his earnest tone. He spoke of the joy he'd rediscovered in her laughter, the comfort of her presence beyond any script. Her heart fluttered, realizing the charade had sparked something authentically beautiful in both of them. Helena inhaled deeply, voice gentle. "I never expected this to go beyond the party." She traced patterns in the courtyard stones, gathering courage as she continued. "My debts nearly crushed me, but you gave me more than money. You gave me kindness." Her admission hung between them, a bridge from two lonely souls to something uncharted. He reached for her hand, sealing the shift from roles to raw connection. In that moment, the world felt suspended, the distant chatter of students, the rustle of leaves. Alexander squeezed her hand, whispering, "Let's build something real together." She nodded, tears glimmering, her burdens lifting in the promise of shared dreams. The orchids cradled in his other hand seemed to smile back at them, hopeful messengers of a new chapter. Their laughter blended, light and genuine, rewriting every expectation they'd ever held. Back in his study later that evening, Alexander stared at his phone, Helena's number glowing. He imagined future texts filled with lazy greetings and inside jokes, far from rehearsed lines. His mind danced with images of quiet dinners, unhurried strolls, moments pure and unscripted. He realized this touching stories they'd lived was only beginning, a prologue to countless chapters. The thought made him grin, eager for what tomorrow might bring. Meanwhile, Helena tucked the orchids into a simple vase at home, petals soft against the glass. She reflected on how a pretend role had become the pivot for her dreams and her heart. In the mirror's reflection, she saw not an actress, but a woman stepping into her own story. Her teacher's planner lay open on the table, now annotated with both lesson plans and heartbeats. A quiet excitement bloomed within her. This partnership felt like the answer to unspoken prayers. Their worlds hadn't fully merged. Boardrooms and classrooms still stood between them. But each day promised new opportunities to learn, adapt, and grow as a team. Camila's blessing lingered in their thoughts, a reminder that forgiveness can heal and unite. As they stepped forward, hands entwined, the future beckoned with daring possibilities. And so, with hearts aligned and curiosity ignited, they braced for the next chapter's first page. So what do you think happened next? Have you ever felt compelled to hide your pain behind a smile, only to find honesty was the real breakthrough? Drop your thoughts below, and let's dive into the twist together. Which moment in Alexander and Helena's journey hit you hardest, and why? If this emotional story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because more touching stories are just around the corner. Don't miss out on what happens when life's greatest surprises arrive unannounced.